this is Sheree with Rehash Fiber. I am here in Palmer, Alaska at the Musk Ox Farm. Join me as we check it all out. I'm here at the Musk Ox Farm. Check it out. Oh, it's fabulous. All right, so join me when I take my tour around. I will show you what I see, and then afterwards we're gonna have a great chat about the qiviut. All right, I am here with Kerry Nelson at the Musk Ox Farm, and we are looking at some of the really beautiful qiviut items. So meet Kerry.
Hello everybody, my name is Kerry Nelson. I'm the communications director here at the Musk Ox Farm, and I'm really excited to be talking with Sheree today and to all of you about qiviut. Did you want me to just launch right in, or did you want to start asking me some questions?
Let's launch right in, because
yeah.
This is just fabulous. Well, I will say, I came yesterday to the farm early just because I was in Palmer and I was so excited and felt qiviut for the first time, because I knew that it was 8 times softer. Is that right? 8 times?
Warmer.
It's 8 times warmer and way softer than wool. And so when I touched it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is heaven. I mean, it just feels like feather beautiful. So I just had to throw that in.
Yes, no, please.
I was so amazed.
Yes, and we like hearing other people's reactions, because I think at this point it's pretty safe to say that we're all very biased here at the Musk Ox Farm. We're a little spoiled by only feeling qiviut for the most part, and so it is interesting sometimes when I do go to other craft fairs, or once I go to other stores and touch just regular wool, I have to remind myself, it's like, Kerry, you're used to touching qiviut. There's nothing wrong with this fiber. It just feels so rough comparatively.
So before we get into these beautiful qiviut items, I would love to hear a little bit more about the farm.
Yes, absolutely. So the Musk Ox Farm, a lot of folks hear farm and they think we're all a family farm, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I'd be remiss and I would not be doing my job if I did not explain that we are actually a nonprofit organization. And so our project here with these beautiful animals that we have on our property, all these musk oxen, actually began back in the 50s. We have a pretty long, complex history, so I'm not going to go through year by year because you'll all fall asleep. But essentially, our founder had this original vision. His name was John Teal Jr. He was an Arctic anthropologist, and so that was his first That's when he first became acquainted with the musk ox and really fell in love with him, and also saw the value in their fiber specifically. And so fast forward to the early 80s, this is when we landed here on this property in Palmer with our herd of musk oxen that our founder had acquired. And so today we have 81 musk oxen on the property, which is just so many, but we love each and every one of them. They all have names. And we are still solely harvesting them for their fiber. They do not get harvested for their meat. The fiber is so unique and so invaluable, and it's such an amazing educational tool. One of the main pillars of our mission as a nonprofit is public education, which is where this comes in, which is really amazing. And then we're also working really hard still to domesticate the musk ox for their fiber and for qiviut production, and to promote qiviut as a sustainable product in the far north. Musk oxen, why musk ox? We get asked that all the time. It's because of their geographically appropriate nature to this climate. They are an Arctic mammal, and yes, there are other farm animals up here that are very conventional. People are farming goats and sheep for fiber and then other meat animals, but it's really, really expensive and it's not easy. These guys don't need a barn in the winter. They just hang out all winter long. That is their happy place. It's what, I think 50 degrees and windy right now today. That's hot. They're like, thank goodness there's a breeze so that I can feel it through my qiviut, or what's left of it anyways. This is the shedding season. So we, as an organization, are really proud to be able to open our doors to the public and share our herd with everybody and share this beautiful fiber that we harvest from them every spring.
Woo. All right, tell me about this.
Oh, qiviut, right? That's why we're here. Got qiviut?
Right.
We do. We are the answer to Cherie's shirt. So I will start with the raw. And so I had already mentioned that they shed in the springtime. That's natural. So all of the wild musk oxen on the tundra right now are currently just losing sheets and clumps of qiviut that just kind of floats away in the breeze, or gets caught on different shrubs and sedges out there that folks who live near wild musk oxen can collect, and they do. Here on the farm, we like to do things a little bit differently and, quote, easier. I say that with a little bit of a smile because nothing's easy. And so we actually gently hand comb all 81 of our animals here on the farm. And so in the springtime, when we see that they're starting to shed, sometimes you'll see a little tuft of qiviut start to come out from underneath their guard hair, which is perfect that I have Abraham here as an example. He is not real, don't worry, we are safe. And so this brown hair, that brown long flowing hair that you see on musk oxen, that is not their qiviut, that's actually their guard hair. That's protecting the qiviut underwool that's underneath that. This is their qiviut. And so we're combing them all out right now. I just talked to our herd manager, Jamie, and she, try as she may to have a sane combing season, they all decide to shed at the same time, and it just goes poof. And so that's where she's at right now. And so when it's first combed off of them, you can already feel how incredibly soft it is. And this is the raw deal. And so we have gone through and just kind of very preliminarily cleaned it, which means that we just kind of pick out the really big chunks of vegetable matter. But you can still see there's like a little, some grass fibers and some hay in there. I mean, of course, we're not bathing our musk oxen out there because, my God, that would be another, 2-person full-time job and they wouldn't like it. But it's just so soft. There's also in our raw fiber, which we do sell to spinners, we do have that available. There is some guard hair in there that's just kind of unavoidable. Even though we're hand combing them, some of that guard hair is going to come out naturally. It just makes me think of a question we get a lot on our tours, is why, we explain to people everything that we do, and really everything that we do with our animals, the socialization, the care that we give them, working with their behaviors and working to domesticate them, all comes down to this moment. It comes down to being able to work with them and being able to comb it off of them by hand in a way that they are comfortable with, because it's really important to us that it is gentle agriculture and it's as stress-free as we can possibly make it. But a lot of folks, after all of that, they're like, wow, that sounds like a lot of work. Why aren't you just shaving them? Which is a valid question, you know, like sheep. And so my first answer to that is because I never want to see a naked musk ox, and I don't think you do either. But more importantly, if we did shave them, there would be so much guard hair in here, and it would just be virtually impossible to separate. And we really want to get to the good stuff underneath that qiviut. And so hand combing really helps with that as well. And so Cherie mentioned earlier that one of the characteristics that makes qiviut so incredible is that it's 8 times warmer than sheep's wool, which is correct. It's incredibly warm. It's incredibly light and soft. It's actually finer than cashmere. And because of that, I mean, this is, I don't know how much this would weigh, but it's probably not even, I mean, this bag is 2 ounces. So just to give you an idea of how light this must feel in our hands, it's really like touching a cloud. It is. It's also a naturally smooth fiber, meaning it doesn't have any barbs or scales, which is a lot of times when folks get that itchiness with other fibers and wools, that's one of the reasons that this tends not to make folks itch. It also doesn't contain any lanolin, which helps with people that are allergic. We actually have one of our board members who's allergic to qiviut, which I just think is so ironic. So, and he has not been able to pinpoint exactly what his allergen is, but he seems to be allergic to a lot of natural fibers, which is really unfortunate, but he's a trooper. He still comes out and says hi to the musk ox, and he just doesn't wear any qiviut. No, wow. But it's typically, so we can't say that it's completely, hypoallergenic, but in a lot of ways it is compared to just general, other wools. Yeah. So once we harvest all of the qiviut every spring, we actually put it all together in one big batch, and then that big batch typically gets stored for a little bit before it's ready to then, it's like in our cycle of getting processed into wool, or into yarn rather. And so we harvest about, I think last year's harvest was around 360 pounds. Each animal, an adult animal, on average will give us anywhere from like 5 to 7 pounds per animal. Some are on the higher spectrum of that, and some are, if they're a little bit younger, there's just less of them, so they're going to give us a little less. So that's a lot of qiviut to get processed. And so it gets sent off to the mill. We asked a lot where we send our qiviut. We've sent it all over the place over the years. We're at a point right now in our organization where we're in this really unique kind of between a rock and a hard place, because we're too big for a lot of really amazing mini mills, and we would love to keep it local up in Alaska. We don't have any big commercial mills up here. We have people doing amazing things with smaller mills, but it's oftentimes too much of a burden for them. They can't take our whole harvest. So we've gotten little small batches made on occasion, which is really awesome. And those tend to be a little bit pricier, just because it's, small batch and it's artisan. Mm-hmm. And so unfortunately, but it's still good because that means we still get to get this qiviut into your hands. We do, as it stands right now, are sending it out to a couple of other mills across the United States. And so that gets sent off. It has the same process as really any other fiber when it comes to the mill process of cleaning and scouring and dehairing and separating. And so it goes through that until it gets to the creme de la creme. And so our bread and butter here is the 100% qiviut. And so I know that you're not going to be able to, it's not going to translate as well on the camera, but Cherie will maybe show her reaction, will tell you. So that is 100% qiviut. That is a skein of it. We typically do 1 ounce skeins at a time. And that value, the retail is $95. And I don't say that to brag by any means, but that is just gives you an idea of how valuable this fiber is because of its rarity. We are one of the only farms in the world that's doing what we're doing. Yes, you can still get qiviut at other places. It's typically going to be wild harvested. Either way, it takes a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Either somebody's out on the tundra, literally like walking behind a herd very carefully so that they don't get charged, and picking up qiviut. And that takes I can only imagine how long that would take to collect enough to get processed. Whereas here we have a much more controlled environment, but it's still only happening once a year, and just everything that goes into the feeding and care of our animals and what it costs to run this place is then what ends up translating into the cost of qiviut yarn. And that's pretty across the board. We do try to keep with industry. We're not trying to, make it more expensive just because we can. And all the proceeds for everything that you buy in our gift shop goes straight back to our nonprofit. And so it's kind of a nice little nice little circle, that we have going there. So that's the 100%. And the most common thing that gets made with that is known as a smoke ring or a noshak, which is NACHAQ. And so it's a neck warmer. And so this is kind of a very common thing that you'll see with qiviut and other qiviut shops as well. And so the idea being that with the lacy pattern especially, which is really more for fashion, I would say, than any sort of function. It's just like a really nice piece that you can wear just every day. It doesn't necessarily have to be if it's super, super cold out, but it also does keep you really warm as well. I definitely wear mine in winter time around here in Alaska. I bunch it up a little bit like around my neck and then zip my coat up, and it keeps you. I'm always astonished at how warm this actually keeps me, because I think, sometimes people will pick it up and they're like, wow, it's really lacy. This isn't going to really keep me very warm, but the properties really do come through in the garment, the same way that the qiviut is helping to keep the musk ox warm in temperatures, not here, thank goodness, but, in the wild, they're surviving temperatures of up to negative 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just incredible. And so this is more of like the kind of just like, everyday or like kind of like fashion statement. You can also, depending, sometimes we'll have them made a little bit longer. You can pull it up over your head. And it does help a little bit, especially some of our more solid patterns with wind. It's not necessarily wind break, but it helps a little bit. And so that is a smoke ring or a noshak. And we typically have these all made with the 100% qiviut, because it's just, you're really gonna want that nice, soft, 100% fiber that right up against your neck.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
So soft. I have a question about the colors and the dyeing. I had no idea that this could then be dyed into a beautiful burgundy and navy and green, that the colors would show up.
So it's actually really incredible, and they vary every year depending on the harvest. And you can kind of see the variation even just in this qiviut. That doesn't go away, and that translates to this one. Because we just kind of let it happen as is, and that's just one color dye. That's just one dye lot. So when that got done, there was not two different reds. That's just how the qiviut took. And so definitely some years it'll be a little brighter, and some years it'll be a little bit darker, just kind of depending on what batch it was. And we don't bleach it. We have experimented. There's a lovely mother-daughter duo here called Alaska Jude's Yarn that we've worked with before, and we still do work with them, where we'll have some of our special run batches that we get spun in Alaska. We'll have them play around with it, and we've had some really beautifully hand-painted skeins where we usually have maybe 20 and they sell like that. They're able to, we've gotten some teals from them before, and I think they do play around a little bit more with, I think that they've experimented with bleaching it, but it tends to turn out a little bit more of like a rusty golden, which can help a little bit with the color, but we tend not to try to do that because we just want to keep the integrity of the fiber. It is pretty remarkable that it can be so vibrant. I mean, there's certainly, fibers that would be brighter than this, but it's nice to be able to offer different colors beyond, this is obviously the natural, and we've got a green and a purple, and I think there's some blue downstairs that you can see in this one, which is a blend, which we do also do blends. We've been starting to experiment a little bit more with that these days. I think just in response to the market, and I think there's a lot of reasons. I think it's really nice to offer a blend because it helps bring the price down. I think it's really nice to offer a wide range of items for all budgets. I mean, I know for me, $95 is a lot of money for a skein of yarn. And maybe that's because I'm such a novice knitter that I'm not ready yet to commit. But it's really nice for that. And then the other benefit to using a blend has to do with the properties of qiviut itself. And so qiviut, we call it opens up. It doesn't necessarily stretch per se, but when you have something like this where you've got a noshak, it's not as noticeable when it opens up, because you're not already putting it tightly around your neck where your body is stretching it out. It's already got this shape. And we'll have folks that have had their qiviut noshaks for 50 years, no joke, and they'll sometimes like reblock it or reshape it. But things like hats and gloves and things that you really want to keep its shape, we tend to use, you can use 100% qiviut, but you just have to keep that in mind that it might open up on you and it might not fit in the same way as when you first created it or bought it. And so blends are really nice. It opens up a whole new world for us in terms of variety of garments that we can offer, and that other people like you can knit with and create. This is another smoke ring. This was a series that we had done called the Adventure Series. This was, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. This is one of the only things, every once in a while we'll get things commercially knit as well. Most of the things that we have are hand knit by a couple of our knitters, or they'll use a machine loom. That's what a lot of the Nosh Ox are done on, with the different patterns. And so this was done with kind of the skier in mind and the outdoor adventurer. And so this is definitely a blend, and you can probably feel the difference compared to the 100%. Yeah. And it will get any qiviut, and even just, I'm sure that you all know, being in the fiber world, that oftentimes when you have a brand new skein of any fiber, the more you touch it and work with it, especially if you're hand knitting it, it's going to get a lot softer. And that's the same goes with qiviut as well in our blends that we do. And once you wash it for the first time, it's just it gets very, very soft with use. And so that was one of our blends that we had made called the Herder's Blend. In which we've got some of those left, and that's 80% qiviut, and then for this one we did 20% bamboo. So that's one of the fibers that we've worked with, and so that's in the actual, and that's done really well for us. We've used the Herder's Blend for a lot. We've used it for hats. We've definitely used it for some mittens. We've experimented with socks, but we're not quite there yet with qiviut. Qiviut does really well in a lot of ways, but it's not really meant to be really high traction. And so we always run into issues with the heel. And so I think eventually we're hoping to offer some socks that are going to have maybe a different, fiber on the heel, and then maybe qiviut in all the right places. Okay. Yeah. And then still on this topic of blends, there's a couple of other ones that we have right now. We're running low on this one, but this one, it was a really interesting blend that we had done. I think we've only got a few skeins left. But this one is 70% of the qiviut from the farm, 15% Cecil Smart Fiber, and 50% bamboo. And the Cecil Smart Fiber, this we had spun by a woman up in Fairbanks, so this was local, and she was the one who brought that up to us. We had never heard of it before. It's really cool. It's actually made with a seaweed out of Iceland that is sustainably harvested, and from what I understand, I did a little bit of research on it, it grows really, really quickly. And so I just thought that was really interesting, and it's still really beautiful, and it has soft. A little bit of a sheen to it, and it's a little bit of a thicker yarn. That's the other thing too. I know I'm kind of bouncing around a lot, but with our 100% qiviut, where did I put that? Well, here's a colored skein. It's pretty thin. I mean, we typically do a 2-ply, and we get asked all the time what the weight is. We say lace weight, which I think is probably the most accurate we're going to possibly get when you're comparing it to other weights of other yarns. But it's not for the faint of heart. If you're just taking up knitting, it can be really intimidating to work with.
It's intimidating for me. Well, just that I want to get it right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be very careful.
Yeah.
Usually I'm just a free spirit.
And
if I mess up, get some more, do it
Yeah.
again. This is gold and fiber, and especially these beautiful creatures have given it to us that I wanted, I'm going to be very careful.
Yeah,
so
and we hear that all the time. We hear so many folks that are avid knitters that are very talented. We've seen their work, and they've got their qiviut drawer that they have not touched, but they keep buying it. So for that one day when they're finally going to be like, you know what, I'm just going to do it, which I am here to encourage you all just to go for it.
Yeah, and I'll do it. I'll just be scared and cautious, but I'll show you. I'll do it very carefully.
Sure, you will be scared for you. So that's another, bringing it back to the blends. That's kind of yet another reason why we're getting into them a little bit more, because it's really nice to offer something that's way more accessible to our beginning knitters. We do have classes here. Obviously, that has changed a little bit with COVID, but we'll be getting back into that. And so with our in-person knitting classes, it's going to be really nice to have something that we can offer people that might be a little bit or maybe don't know. I think that happens a lot too, where people just see that it's yarn. They're like, this is really soft and amazing. I've knit one scarf for myself, I can do it. And then they take it home and they start and they're wondering why they're struggling so much because the yarn is just so fine. One of the other blends that we have, which this was really accessible just as a price point. These I think we were retailing between $45 and $65 initially, depending on if they were colored or not, because we had some of these hand painted. This is our bullpen blend, and this is like one of the roughest that we've done because it's 80% bee drop qiviut and 20% wool. So you can feel how rough that feels compared to the 100% or even the other blends. And by bee drop qiviut, some of you probably are familiar with that terminology. That is, when it's going through the cleaning process in the mill, they're separating out kind of like the bigger chunks and the guard hair. And like, yes, some qiviut does get through there, but it's typically not that super high quality qiviut. And so you have all this waste fiber, and we were like, why don't we do something with it instead of just throwing it away? And so we got it made into a blend, and actually it's been really well received. It was kind of it kind of surprised us how many folks were like, you know what, yeah, I'm gonna use that. It feels a little bit rougher, that's fine, but maybe I won't use it just for a neck warmer. We've had a lot of people that have added it just to the patterning and things.
Sure.
And that's actually what this hat is made out of. So this is the bullpen. Mostly just on the top, and so that was one of our colored skeins, and then on the bottom I believe is our herder's blend, so it's a little bit softer, so it's not gonna scratch the heck out of your forehead, and so it's still very wearable. And so we've still been able to use that as well in our garments.
It feels soft to me. I mean, compared to some of the wools.
Yeah.
It's soft, so it's just, this is so super soft. It's like a little feather on your hand.
Yeah.
And then this would feel rougher, but in the scheme of things, this is still really soft.
Well, thank you, Sri. You're bringing me back to reality of like out of the qiviut world, 100%.
Yeah, the beautiful.
Yeah.
This here.
Yeah, definitely. And just like hats as well, I was kind of talking about the concept of how qiviut opens up, and you want typically a blend if you're going to do a hat for sure, because we've got some folks that have brought us their 100% qiviut hats that they've bought years and years and years ago, whether it was from us or another store, and they're just desperate for help, and there's unfortunately really not much you can do once it gets to that point. And so we recommend, if you're going to do 100% qiviut for a hat, some of our knitters will put some elastic in there. So this one is actually a 100% qiviut hat, and you can feel there's just a small little elastic band in there. So that's one way to get away with it. And I think that works really well. I mean, you can usually barely even tell that there's elastic in it. And I know this is 100 as well that has some elastic. Or the alternative to that is to do a blend, or kind of like what we did with this, with the herder's blend. That was more just for comfort, but you could do just the band would be a different fiber altogether, or a blend, and then 100% qiviut on the top for that warmth, so that it keeps its shape. And then the one last blend that I just wanted to kind of throw out there, and this is not even on the market yet here, we just got this in. This is probably the most blendy blend we've ever done. It's 50% qiviut and 50% merino wool. And so it is, this was again, when we first got this in, because we're so spoiled, I've just been such a brat about it. I'm like, this is so rough.
It's not, this feels good, because the ones who work with wool, merino's fabulous, right?
Yeah.
So now, merino with qiviut, this is soft.
God, I'm treated as such a fiber snob. I'm not even trying.
Okay, because you're touching the beautiful stuff all the time.
I know, and then you get to this, like we get it back and we're like, oh. But we've been working with it. I've actually taken home, I got the privilege. When I say that I knit and I purl straight. I've done some projects with the guidance of YouTube, thank goodness. But I'm still very much a beginner knitter, and so I'm knitting up some just like samples for the gift shop so people can feel how much softer it gets. Even just hand knitting this one little square that I've been doing, it's been amazing to see. And this stuff is really, really durable. And actually, there's a common misconception that even with 100% qiviut, that you don't dare throw this in the washer dryer, and that's actually really just not true. We don't recommend that you put it in the dryer just for the overall longevity, but I've had to talk down mothers in tears when they've found that their son did the laundry for once in their lives, and they put their beautiful qiviut garment in the dryer, and they're just, freaking out, and it's like, it's gonna be okay. Like it actually does not shrink. And so we do recommend that you air dry it. But for a lot of our blends, our director, Mark, actually, when we first got this 50% qiviut, 50% merino wool blend in, he knit up just a little patch and just did an experiment and threw it in his washer and threw it in the dryer, and it is incredibly soft afterwards. And so we're looking forward to all the possibilities with this because we just got a ton in. We do have natural. We've got this really beautiful, again, you're never sure how it's going to turn out. You pick your color swatches, but it's such a different fiber that we knew it would be a little bit different. But we were going for more of like a bluer teal, but it turned out a little bit greener, but that's okay. It's really beautiful. And I think that was supposed to be chrysanthemum. I can't remember the names of the colors offhand, but it's kind of like a rusty red. That's a hard one to describe. Yeah, and so we're really excited for what we can do with these and how we can offer them to you folks as well, whether as yarn or in garment form.
Yeah. Wow. So you've given me such a great qiviut hands-on, and this is fabulous. But while you were talking, right past you are all the beautiful, beautiful musk ox. So on the tour, I was just standing there like someone would be sleeping closer or hanging out closer to the fence, and I just stare, and I'm like, I could be here all day. Do I have to stay with the tour? But what I was thinking is that, what about other stories about the musk ox? Like, what are are there highlights since you've been working here, or things that would be really interesting to people?
Yes. Oh my goodness. This could be another 10 hours. Totally. So you might have to stop me. But yes, I would say all of that. There are so many highlights to being here with these animals, to the animals themselves. Just being on the property in Alaska in and of itself is beautiful. And of course, with any organization that you work for, whether you have animals or not, there's going to be some lows as well. I would say the biggest highlight for me that continues to be a highlight almost every single day, and I'm not exaggerating just for the camera, is their incredible personalities. When I first started working here, I did know what a musk ox was, which is a lot further along than a lot of people, which is totally fine. They are not a very well-known animal. I was so enamored by them, but to me, I'm like, they're all the same. And I would, hear these other, people that I worked with that would just kind of be able to point one out in a pasture from like a mile away, or they'd have all these stories about them. And I'm like, how are you doing that? And now that I've been here for long enough, I understand, because they really do. Every single one of these animals has a really unique personality. Most of them are very endearing and hilarious. They are just big. They're most closely related to goats, which a lot of people don't know, and you can see it. When we have people come out here that have goats, they're like, oh yeah, they'll see them do something, and it's like they're just big Ice Age goats. They're also very majestic when they want to be. But yeah, I just think that there's just this kind of roller coaster of emotions for me still when I go out there, and whether I'm sitting in my office looking out the window at them, or I'm maybe helping our herd manager, Jamie, herd them to the barn, or maybe I'm helping comb. I have such immense respect for these animals. And it's because of their personalities, I think, has only further heightened that. And so I would say that's a big highlight. Another big highlight, of course, is babies.
Oh, babies.
Which I hesitate to even say this year, because we did not have any babies this year, which I keep getting the question, like, are you guys going to be okay? And I'm like, oh, we're good. Everyone else is very upset. Which is totally understandable. We breed really low intentionally, typically every year, because we're harvesting them for their fiber. And so our animals are living really, really long lives with us, and they're still giving us qiviut every year, even well into their 20s. Some of our animals are as old as, our oldest gal is 27, which is just incredible. But the years that we do have the babies, I would say highlight for me was the first time I got to see one calve. That was just incredible. It's an incredible experience for any animal to be able to witness that, but it was like a spiritual moment to recognize that what a rare experience that somebody like me gets to see this animal have a calf. And so I would say that's a huge highlight. I think the lows would be, and of course it's going to be different for all of us here because we have different roles here at the farm. I think, the lows that I can think of that stick out in my head the most are just the inclement weather, honestly. You know, I do a lot of filming and for social media, and even like just like the folks that do work on the farm that are outside every single day. I'm sure Jamie's just like, yeah, okay, you get to go behind the camera for a minute and come back inside. What about me? But you know, we're in Alaska, and like, yes, we're not on the, you know, high, you know, Arctic. We're still kind of mild as far as Alaskan weather is concerned, but we can get some pretty gnarly days out there, and that does not, the musk oxen aren't stopping for that. They don't take the day off, and so you're kind of always on, no matter what's happening outside, whether it's weather or just the world. You always have to be here to make sure that these guys are safe and well fed and happy. And so I guess that just brings it back to a high. I mean, it's really not a low. Maybe some uncomfort for us as humans because we don't have a full body of qiviut when we're outside.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here, but I just want to say that because of Kerry, the communications director, I only really look at Instagram and for fiber stuff. When the musk oxen were coming up and then presented with so much personality and with Danny and Jamie talking about them, and if you're on there, you see it. I am just intrigued. So thank you for that, because that sparked all of this, like my curiosity about qiviut, and then coming here, and then actually coming here. So thank you so much for that.
You are so welcome, Cherie. It's so nice to hear that, because you know, oftentimes you're behind a computer or your phone and you're posting these things and you're like, is anyone reading this? I know they are, but it's so awesome when I get to meet people that have been kind of following us along in that capacity, and I certainly get a lot of joy out of it. I mean, it's such an amazing gift to be able to share these guys with the world, and to be able to do it through that lens is really important. And you know, beyond the pandemic, I mean, that kind of that only tripled our online outreach when we had to shut down for a little bit. But we have so many visitors that maybe only come here once, because Alaska's a lifetime trip for many people, and they are never able to come back. And so it's incredible with our technology today that we're able to bring the farm to your living rooms. And so thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, sure, for sure. So check them out, Musk Ox Farm on Instagram, and you can mention any other of the
so it's pretty much, we've got Instagram, so it's just at Musk Ox Farm, and then we've got a Facebook page as well, which is the Musk Ox Farm, and then we do have a YouTube channel as well. We're working to maybe be a little bit more active on it, but we do have a lot of really great videos on there if you're interested, and that's Musk Ox Farm Official. So those are our three main social media sites, and then our just general website, if you don't do social media, which I'm assuming you do because you're on YouTube right now, but you never know, is just muskoxfarm.org. And so we've got a ton of information on there, and you can learn how to get more involved with the farm, even if you're not planning to ever come here in person, or it's your dream. You can adopt a musk ox, just putting that shout out there, to help support us. And so yeah, you can find us online all over the place.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And their website is wonderful. I was reading about all the musk ox, because you can adopt them, but they tell you about them, and I'm like, oh, they're so great and so cute. It's just a wonderful site.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
all right.
you.
Well, I guess just been a wonderful day here, and thank you for everything.
You're welcome. Thank you, Cherie, for coming and hanging out with me and talking about fiber. It's the highlight of my day.
All right. Well, you're welcome. Thank you. And if you can make it to Palmer, Alaska, to the Musk Ox Farm, you will be so happy and so thrilled with these beautiful creatures. And then you get some of this. So, all right, everybody. Happy travels, happy qiviut, and thanks for watching.